not proven, but that's what the complaint says.
Then over the page, and we have a number of sets of listings. These, I take it, are just reproductions of the same listing taken on different dates. Is that correct?
That is correct. Similar listing or same listings, but taken on different time frame.
And then what I have is tab 10. It's a document entitled Information. And it's a court document.
Yes.
Okay. And that document demonstrates that charges were laid against Ms. Lamb and Mr. Buchanan with respect to operating without a business license.
That is correct. So just to be clear, Madam Chair, when administration extends to this level where we forward our information to prosecution, it is to state that with all the efforts of trying to achieve compliance, administration found it not to be successful, and so therefore they resorted to the final stage of the enforcement step, which is to go to prosecution. So this is the, in some ways, the most extreme level of enforcement that we have within the city to have compliance to our bylaws.
Then over the next page, there's a document titled Registered Mail. I don't want to take you through that. And then there's another document, a couple pages on, that's another court document that's stamped Robson Square Provincial Court and states that it's an order.
That is correct. So that's the decision of the courts that they found Ms. Land guilty of the offenses that we have put forward to prosecution, and the decision of the court to request to order her not to operate until July 2022.
Okay. And then I'm going to skip you through. There's a bunch of, the next few pages are several emails. So at tab 14, there's a further document entitled Registered Mail dated September the 22nd, 2021.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that document is?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is a letter that the Chief License Inspector had sent at the time, September 22nd, 2021. And this is to advise Ms. Land that her application for a 2021 short-term rental business license has been denied or not supported, and also cites the bylaw stipulation that Mr. Dixon had previously indicated, where when one is convicted through provincial court, then that the act of the Chief License Inspector is to suspend based on that decision. And Ms. Land has then chosen to appeal, and hence we're here today.
And then over the next page, what I have is tab 15. There's a further, what appears to be a summary with respect to, it reproduces the photographs and the like. It's entitled Matched Property Listing, and then it has Vancouver, BC, Canada, and this appears to be a photo. Can you tell me what this document is? Yes,
Through the chair, this document is a software that we use as part of our enforcement, and we periodically do checks on the individual. And in this particular case, this was printed in December of 2021. And if you look at page 204, on the top it says 2 documented stays in January 2021, 3 in December 2020, so on and so forth. And then at the bottom of 104, it also goes to June 22nd, 2021. All these dates indicate a period of time that we believe Ms. Land has continued to operate the short-term rental, even though she didn't have a license during most of this period, and even though the courts have, or that she's been sent to court, that she continued to do this activity. And so these are indications of the dates that we believe illegal activity has been going on and continue to have gone on for some period of time.
And just to be fair to Ms. Lamb, I just want to confirm for council that the date of the order and the guilty plea in provincial court was the 27th of July, 2021. The city's summary does not indicate that she's operated after July the 27th of 2021, but it was operating up until close to that date. Now, as the operation of the bylaw, Mr. Miyagi, doesn't allow the chief license inspector to issue a license here, but it is open to council to issue a license to Ms. Lamb for this. Do you have any comments about whether, in your view, a license should issue to Ms. Lamb, given the circumstances that have occurred thus far with regard to this property and with regard to her any other short-term rental activity she maybe have been involved in?
Thank you. Through the chair, I have a little bit of items to read here, so if you can tolerate me here.
Of course, go ahead. Take your time.
Thank you. So administration has suspended Ms. Land in 2021, her STR license, in May 2021, and continued to hold this position into 2022. And as Mr. Dixon stated, the bylaw states that with the court decision, it needs to be looked at. Now, Ms. Land has extensive history with the city on the STR licensing and the operations of her short-term rental activities in the past that raises question to the city on her willingness to operate within the boundaries and in the spirit of the STR bylaw going forward. In her statement to administration, when we were conducting a review of her 2021 STR license application, she stated in her own words, "I have operated Airbnb since 2016. Based on this claim made by her, the city would assume that she would be very aware of the short-term rental bylaws that came into effect in September of 2018. Our records indicate that Ms. Lamb was involved in operating an illegal, unlicensed short-term rental activity at various locations in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Prior to this 374 East 28th Avenue hearing that we're here today, Ms. Lamb was active in operating an illegal short-term rental operations at 751, 753, and 749 East 31st Street in 2019 and 2020, according to our records. Our information says that they end up selling this property in 2021. At this address of 749 East 31st Avenue, this is a triplex type building, so there are 3 independent units that are legally able to be rented to 3 independent long-term renters, if you will. On May 2019, her husband, Gary Buchanan, held a short-term rental license for 749 East 31st only. And then when we began to investigate this particular location, he, what we call GOB'd, which has gone out of business. He canceled his license when we began our investigation process. However, in October 2019, 3 violation tickets were issued to Ms. Land and Mr. Buchanan for these 3 locations as they continued to operate illegal short-term rentals at all 3 of these locations. The tickets were not disputed. These were $1,000 each tickets, but they were not paid as well. In 2020, there was no license issued for 749 East 31st location or any of the other suites. And interestingly enough, in November of 2020, Ms. Land applied for a short-term rental license at 749 East 31st for this location. We find this application peculiar as this is November 2020, if you remember, Madam Chair. And in May 2020, we began investigating her for STR activities at this address, 374 East 28th, the address that we're talking about today. So we do not understand why she applied for the short-term rental license at 749 East 31st in November 2020 when she already had a license at 374 East 28th. and was hosting a series of short-term rental activities in 2020. She would essentially be declaring that she lives at two locations as of her primary residence, and we feel that there is something wrong there. Now, however, her driver's license showed that 374 East 28th has been her home address since 2018. Ms. Land and Mr. Buchanan, as we stated in the package, were issued two $1,000 violation tickets, or $1,000 tickets each for operating illegal STRs at this 374 East 28th in May 29th. However, she continued to list and book short-term rentals even after that period, and as we indicated, then she went to prosecution and then was found guilty. So the courts had said the decision was rendered in 2021. Our information showed that she still has an active listing on Airbnb. We show a number of documented stays. Ms. Land has applied for a 2021 SDR license in June, and we've, through our review, have overturned or have did a non-support is what we call it.
Just to clarify, could you provide the address of where you believe her to have the current Airbnb listing?
Her current Airbnb listing is at this address, the 374 East 28th.
Thank you.
Now, a couple of other peculiar points that we'd like to bring up. On December 2021, so this is just last month, if you will, or 2 months ago, if you will, the city received an SDR application for this address, 374 East 28th, from a Miss Evelina Lim. Now, we held back the issuance of this license, and maybe later on, perhaps Ms. Land can elaborate on who this person is that applied for this short-term rental license for her address, when she's explained to us of no such individuals living at this address, and she's indicated that she lives there on her own, so on and so forth. So that was a peculiar development in December, just recently. And lastly, Ms. Lam is claiming her current listing will show a 30 days plus listings. I would question how someone who lives in Vancouver can list their property, their primary residence, for 30 days or more any time of the year and still consider that to be their primary residence. We do have those kind of situations when we have people that go to school away for a certain period of time, or snowbirds, if you will, that go down south and are vacant for a period of time. Ms. Lam has indicated to us that she works from home, and she works in Vancouver. So therefore, these 30-day listings are also a peculiar indication that perhaps this is not her primary residence.
And just to clarify, it's the entire home that you found that's up,
Yes.
up for a short-term rental?
Listing says entire home. Administration finds in conclusion that Ms. Lam to be a higher risk of non-compliance to the SDR bylaws in the future. We suspect she's been operating SDRs in a commercial-like manner, like a hotel operator, if you will, booking non-occupied suites as SDRs when, in fact, they could be rented in the long term to other renters, if you will, in the long-term scenario. She has demonstrated high disregard for the bylaws that are in place. The indications of SDR activity at her address in 2021, despite not having a valid short-term rental license, is a strong statement of disregard for the bylaws, especially given the tickets. And of course, she knew she was under the prosecution. The city has devoted numerous and extensive amounts of time and resources to keep Ms. Land accountable for her non-compliant ways. It would be noted that to be advanced to prosecution in provincial court, as I indicated earlier, is the highest form of our enforcement measures to achieve compliance. And after many hours have been devoted by city administration to achieve voluntary compliance from her. We feel, in fact, it is very easy to be in compliance with the SDR bylaws that council has approved, and thousands of license holders do so currently. And yet she continues to ignore the regulations that apply to everyone who operates short-term rentals in Vancouver. We hope the council panel keeps this in consideration when rendering their decision on when and or how long she should be not issued a short-term rental license. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel members, do you have any questions for the witness? I'll just, I'll give you a moment. I can't see you because I'm in the chambers, but if for whatever reason you cannot put yourself on the queue, please let the clerk know. I'll just give you a moment. Okay. Seeing no one on the queue and not hearing from the panel.
Chair, I am on the
Oh.
queue.
Oh, okay.
It's Councillor Dominato.
Sorry, Councillor Dominato. Please go ahead with your questions.
Yeah, thank you for the chronology and the additional background. I'm just hoping that you can clarify in total how many properties Lizanne and her husband or ex-husband have been operating as STRs in the city. And I'm sorry, we didn't get that chronology in advance, so I'm just curious if you could articulate that for us.
Yes, of
And
course.
how many of those properties were not in compliance? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Through the chair, we are in knowledge of the 749 series, so that there's 3 properties there, independent units there. Her current location of 4 E28, that is also a duplex type building. And our understanding is that there's the suite that she's, her address is on right now. There was another suite that's adjacent. It's on a corner lot, and so that's all on the same lot as well. So there's 2 buildings there. So we believe that she's been active in 5 illegal short-term rental activities. Our understanding through our records is that they've also purchased property in October 2021, and that is a unit 641 East Avenue. Currently, we don't have any records of there, but that is property under her and her husband. So in total, to answer your question, we believe she was involved in 5 short-term rental activities.
Okay, 5 and in all 5 instances compliance with city law.
Through the chair, that is correct.
And
Chair.
thanks. I just have one more question. Does that include also the properties you had mentioned that Mr. Buchanan has a license for? So sometimes they were in compliance and out of compliance, or is that in addition to the 5?
Through the chair, that is not in addition, but that's part of. So we believe they were working in together. Now, we understand
I don't see anyone else in the queue for questions. If you're having difficulty with your queue, please notify the clerk, and the clerk will notify me, and we will move on. So does the applicant have any questions for the witness? You do. We'll just wait to have your microphone turned on, if that's okay. Oh.
First of all, we don't have 5 properties.
Any questions you have of the witness?
Have you ever met me when you've done the inspections? who have you been dealing with in terms of your
I investigate and also
for the court?
But I do, right now,
Sorry? I just want to know who have your staff met?
located, have, areas, that I believe to have, to investigate as well. The
The other question is, have you visited the site? Because when you mentioned was his prior house, have you stepped the property of the city on Airbnb and indicated the house? Because you mentioned it's the lot and what you suite. So you have stepped inside the list for what
information that I have is under statement that you provided to Alexander Holmes staff,
okay.
you indicated that this was 2 levels, and that you on one of the levels and dealt the other.
Okay, so clarify that because you indicated the house was rented out to Airbnb. On the 749 E20 East 31st, on those 2 units that you talked about, has any of your staff went into the property and witnessed the Airbnb was ongoing? Has the inspection been done? Because I haven't.
Through the chair, we have a case file management system called Posse, and in that there is very extensive information, emails going back and forth with Mr. Buchanan,
Mr. Buchanan, okay,
and
thank
all
you.
sorts of information regarding Ms. Land as well. So our investigations indicate what I've stated.
do you have any other questions?
Also, in terms of talked about the court find us guilty, do you have information how much fine I'm paying versus how much fine Mr. Buchanan is paying? The dollar amount that's found by judge, what is my dollar amount that I'm supposed to pay?
I'm sorry, I'm not privy to that information.
Okay.
I just know that there was a guilty plea, and that's the fact that we need to understand as well, which we take that into consideration.
Any further questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move on to opening remarks from the applicant. So please go ahead, and the record already shows that the applicant is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Hao Sheng Lan?
Yes, I go by Mona as well.
Okay, would you
can
prefer
call-
we call you Mona?
Yeah, please.
Okay, Mona, please go ahead.
So in 2020, I went through a separation with my husband, now ex-husband. It appeared to be he was meeting with the inspector, city inspector, without telling me. He was making promises to the city inspectors and having communication with the cities without telling me. I have no knowledge about his meetings, no knowledge about the 749 and 751 that was listed as Airbnb. We had a renter, permanent renter for the basement and also Landway Home for about 2 years now. So when he was talking about, sorry, I didn't get your name, was regarding our Airbnb license. Perhaps Mr. Buchanan had reapplied. I have no recollection. I'm not involved with that. I needed money to pay for my legal fee that I'm battling with my ex-husband on custody battles. 2020, when the COVID hit, I had no choice but to operate a business because I have to feed my child.
Just take a moment if you need that.
I had asked my ex-husband to sell the property. He refused. That's why I never applied for it again. I asked him to sell the property for 374 East 28, and he refused and refused. And I had no choice to continue operating, and he said he had talked to the city and everything was okay. And we continue with it because I need the money to pay my legal fee. I have to pay the property taxes. I have to pay the expense for my child because I'm not getting any child support. He wasn't working. He's still not working. And anything regarding it, so I have no choice. And right now, I'm also have no choice because there's a 15 days of trial coming up, and that's gonna cost $150,000. And I am been living there since August with my son upstairs. And downstairs, there's 3 suites altogether, a downstairs space. We only using the Airbnb for 1 bedroom, and that's it, not the whole house as you instated. And I was fined $2,500 by the judge, and Mr. Buchanan was fined $500 in court. I paid 5 times more than Mr. Buchanan, and he was operating Airbnb under 749 East 31st. I have no idea how he got the license just prior to our sale of home before November. So from probably October till December, Mr. Buchanan was actually hosting Airbnb without my knowledge. I moved out of that house already. I was living at 374 East 28th. I had no idea what was going on in that house. And the city issued him a license to do Airbnb at that property, even though he was pleaded guilty and he received a license. But me, right now, I'm not able to use up funds to pay for any expense of the property tax and feed my child.
Take your time.
That's it.
Okay, and now, do you have any witnesses?
No, I don't.
All right. And I don't see any here on the list. Panel, I'm going to ask the panel, the other, Councillor Bly, Councillor Dominato, do you have any questions?
Jerry, I'm on the queue for questions.
Oh,
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I don't see you on my queue here. And let me just make sure we're at the appropriate part in the proceedings for that. Just a moment. Just one moment, Councillor Bly. Okay, please go ahead, Counselor Bly.
Thanks very much. And Mona, thank you for sharing your perspective. I just had a couple of questions. So right now, I get there are a couple of properties that are being discussed. My question is, you mentioned that you would like to sell the property. So I'm assuming that one is for East 28th. Is that what you're referring to?
The East 28th, I asked my ex-husband to sell it in 2020, and he refused to sign a document. Then I went to the family lawyer to force him to sign it. He still refused. So now we're in the trial, family law, family court, to decide what we're gonna do with this property. But that won't come up till October. But
Okay, so
meanwhile, I still have a mortgage to pay, and it's my responsibility because I live in the property.
right, but both of your names are on the title?
Yes, but
Yeah, okay.
he is not allowed to live in the property. It's an order by judge, by the family court. So me and my son is in the property, and it's my responsibility to carry the mortgage since I live in the property.
Okay, so then is October, did you say, is your court case?
Yeah,
So is it your intention to live in the property and Airbnb the additional suite if you had the option to get a license out, you know,
yes.
depending on what happens in this proceeding, and then you'll stay living in that property?
I've been living there since August, but
Yeah.
last year, 2021. But the hearing at the trial is not coming up till the end of October, and it's for 15 days. And at that point, the judge would decide either we
Right.
sell the property or, yeah.
So can I ask you why did you cancel your business license, your short-term rental license around May 2020, or not renew it, however it worked, but continue? So why didn't you just continue on with a business license?
I um I did not cancel it. It just wasn't able to get renewal. There was
Why didn't you renew it?
the city was asking for a copy of my driver license, and I never actually updated address. So we've been in and out of that house numerous times. Um, when we were doing a renovation, we move out back to this house, then we move out. When we finish the renovation, we move to a new home. So we've been back and forth a couple times. I never really updated my address. And in 2020 May, the marriage was falling apart, and I didn't really want to operate Airbnb anymore. I spoke to my ex, saying I'm not renewing anymore, and I want to sell the home. So
Right, but then you continue to have Airbnb rentals.
exactly, exactly, because I didn't have any money. The COVID hit. My line of work was completely shut down. I'm in the mortgage business. There was no open house allowed for a few months, so there was no business. There's no buyer buying houses. They were not able to look at the houses, so there was no business. I didn't have any money to pay for my mortgage, to pay for my child. The child was sitting at home, and I have to be with my child. I have no way
Okay,
to pay for the bill.
you're saying you had no way to pay for the business license or the
No,
Airbnb?
I wasn't able to get one because my address on the on my driver license is not stated at 374 East 28th because I never
Right, but if that
updated.
was your right, so why didn't you update your license so that you could be in compliance with the business license? Surely, um, that I
It
think
just
only takes about 4
it's
weeks.
oversight on my part. I move, in and out of that property, so I just didn't update it.
So if you had an updated driver's license, you
Yes.
would have been able to renew your business license and none of this would be happening. Is that how I understand it?
I'm not certain because when the city asked me for the driver license, and that's when I know I'm not able to, I don't have it. And then I just did not continue the process. I'm not sure. I cannot answer that question because I didn't go through that, but I imagine I could.
Yeah, it seems like a huge headache for just a simple address change on your driver's license
It is,
for you in a difficult time.
yes, it's a very difficult time mentally and physically.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, well, what I'll do, I'll just pause my questions and I see that that Councillor Dominato's on the queue and I have a couple follow-ups, but I'll just pause
Okay.
there, Chair.
Um, Of course, I do not see Councillor Dominato on my queue, but I will ask that the clerk advance Councillor Dominato before we move on to questions from legal counsel of the City of Vancouver as the applicant. So please go ahead, Councillor Dominato. I'm going to add you to my queue here.
Thanks, Chair. And thank you, Mona, for sharing your story, and I appreciate this is a very difficult time for you, or has been. I Councillor Bly asked a lot of questions I was going to ask about it. I will follow up on one. The question was asked about uh, property title holders, and I understand it is you and your ex-husband, and I'm curious, and maybe this will end up having to be a question for our staff, but in terms of presenting today, you're presenting on this issue, and I'm curious, were both you and Mr. Buchanan invited to participate in today's hearing?
No, he doesn't live in the property anymore, so we are not treated as an entity anymore because we are in the separation. I don't discuss anything about this property with him further. It's just a very messy divorce, and so we're not in communication with this. Everything, all the communication has gone through our lawyers, and all the decisions are made by judge at this point.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify again, is what I heard was that that you didn't want to continue the short-term rental, that you communicate that to your ex-husband, and the opportunity to renew that license was presented, but you needed an updated driver's license. That's what was asked
Yes,
by the city, was to confirm your address and using a driver's license as a reference point for where you were living. Is that correct?
that's right.
Okay. I may have further questions, but I'm going to pause there. Like I said, Councillor Bly asked a number that I had. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
I'm going to, I have just a couple of clarifying questions for you myself. And just before we move on to Mr. Dixon, I'm just wondering if you could clarify. I thought I had heard you say, so is it the case that Mr. Buchanan had a license, he was in violation of some or the terms of his license, and the city continued to grant him a license, but you have had a license, you said, or you have not had?
Well, we both own this property on 374 East 28th, and we both plead guilty in court. So we both should be treated equally, not having a second chance of having a license. But my understanding is he somehow successfully, he was staying at the other house at 749 East 31st, which was mentioned in the witness statement. And Mr. Buchanan operated Airbnb.
With a license?
I'm not certain. He was not charged with that property, so I'm not sure. But he was operating. I have the listing.
So you're not sure if he had a license for that?
I would think he has,
Okay.
because he just learned, he got the pleaded guilty from the 374. I imagine he understand the bylaw at that point.
I can follow up and ask about that later.
Okay.
On, which I will do. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
I'm hearing you correctly and I'm understanding what you're saying.
Perfect.
I
Thank
also
you.
just wanted to, in the package that we have that was referenced before by Mr. Dixon when he was examining the witness, it does say that the whole house is for rent. And I was just wondering if you could comment on that, considering you had mentioned that it was a room in the house.
It did on the Airbnb listing. I'm not sure you ever go on the website. It just asked for that space. Is that whole space It doesn't have like just part of the suite, like it doesn't give me the selection of that. So I don't have access to that unit when I have a different entrance when we use a different. So it's a corner lot of 28th and John Street. So there's a door on the east 28th. That's where the Airbnb goes to, and there's one on John Street. That's where my son and me go to on the second floor, and then one part of the back of the main floor.
Okay, and how is this relayed to people that you potentially have tried to host? Just because it says here the whole house.
But it does also say it's a one bedroom.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Right? Does it say one bedroom? I'm sorry. I perhaps I selected wrong item. I'm not certain, but it's just a one bedroom unit at the front of the entrance, and that's it. The rest of me and my son is over there.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
answering my questions.
Chair, I have a follow-up question, Councillor Bly.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Councillor Bly, and then we'll move on to Mr. Dixon. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Mona, I just have a quick follow-up question. The city staff witness stated that a different person by a different name applied for a short-term rental license December 2021. Do you know who that is?
I posted for long-term rental just because I have it empty for the last 4 months and I needed that income. The person that wanted to rent it, they want to use it as an Airbnb, but it was under the condition of getting approval from the city. I have disclosed the information about the issue with the getting the license on this property under with my past experience. So the person that doesn't want to rent it anymore just because she can't really obtain the license and she want to move in with me and then operate the one bedroom for me, not for me, for herself, but I'm not able
Wait,
to.
so sorry, just can you pause for a second? She wants to move in with you, like into your current home
Yeah,
with your
so
son?
so what had happened is downstairs, there's one bedroom at the front, and then there's another bedroom on the back of the house on one floor. And me and my son was gonna stay upstairs, and she's gonna be on the main floor, and also just renting the whole first floor out.
What's your relationship to this person?
It's just a renter. She's just a potential renter applying for it, but she says she didn't get the license from the city and she doesn't want to rent it from me.
Okay, so you didn't know her previously
No,
to discussing how you could co-live in your home.
no, I don't know her, but because of a 4 month of not able to rent out the property as the Airbnb. In July, when I pleaded guilty in court, I spoke to the prosecutor about the possibility of getting the Airbnb license again. They did not tell me I would not be able to a potential of getting a license again. So I was patiently waiting for the response from the rental of the city. It took a long time to finally get the response and able to speak to you guys right now. But prior to that, I was losing hope and I needed again, I'm in a financial difficulty. I had no choice but posting it on the Facebook and also on the Craigslist looking for long term.
Okay, so is it still posted and you're currently looking for a long-term tenant?
I'm now posted at 30 days rental on the Airbnb and still looking for a tenant at this time on the Facebook.
Okay, you still have it listed on Airbnb.
I have it listed over 30 days, not the short
Right.
term, but 30 days. Anything over 30 days.
Right, okay. I'm just going to check Chair to make sure I've got all those questions answered. Okay, I think I do. Yes, that's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I believe you'll have another opportunity if you need to clarify during discussion, Councillor Bly, but I'm not quite sure if you'll be able to ask the applicant at that time. Are you satisfied with the answers?
Yeah, yes, and if you wouldn't mind just helping me understand the process that we're in, when do we get to ask follow-up questions to the witness, City of Vancouver staff?
Yes, we do, of City of Vancouver staff, but not, and the witness. Um,
We as generally speaking, don't
Please, Mr. Dix.
follow like absolutely strict rules of evidences in a courtroom. So generally speaking, in these hearings, if you wish to recall a particular witness to ask them an additional question, we do that if we do it before we proceed into the discussion, and even sometimes when we've gone into the discussion. So it is flexible at this point.
So it's not like a public hearing, Councillor Bly. I was just.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you
it's
very
not.
much, Mr. Dixon, for clarifying that. So you can ask questions of the applicant if they're willing to answer them later on during discussion by the business license hearing panel.
Well, I do have follow-up. I do have follow-up questions to our witness, City of Vancouver staff, based on Mona's
Yes, and
testimony.
you can ask those questions then. But right now, we're going to, I just want to check. Councillor Dominato, you're on my queue, and I understand we're having some IT issues between WebEx and in the chambers. Did you intend to be on the queue? To ask more
Yes,
questions?
sir. I had a follow-up question to Mona.
Okay.
That should
Sorry,
happen
Miss.
now. That should happen now.
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, Mona, a follow-up just based on your last comments about you currently have the home listed on Airbnb, but you're also seeking a long-term tenant. Could you just elaborate? Do you have a preference? Would you prefer to get a short-term rental license from the city, or would you prefer to put this part of your home on the market for long-term rental?
I do prefer to have a short term because I do need the financial assistance from the short term rental. The long term rentals, I have a bunch of furniture in there and I do have to clear that out. I don't have a space for it. So that's another thing. I posted as a furnished rental for long term, and I haven't been getting a lot of. I don't get a lot of people who are interested in furnish, and I don't really know what I'm gonna do with those furniture. I don't have a manpower to move it by myself, and therefore I have to hire somebody. Then I have to pay somebody to move it when I'm already in the financial difficulty. So I think best scenario would be a short-term rental for us. Would be a better assistant because at this time my mortgage payment is $6,000 a month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. That's all my questions right now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll move on to questions for the applicant from Ian Dixon, City of Vancouver's Council. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have some questions about the space that you were previously renting. The documents that were provided and the Airbnb listings do describe it as a full unit, and you described there as being two entrances. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they go to separate units?
Yes.
So there's no ability to connect between the two units?
No.
There's no connection between the two units?
No.
Do they have separate addresses?
This is the property is as a non-conforming, classified as a non-conforming duplex. It does legally on the PID. It just have one address only. However, on
It doesn't have civic addresses on it. Is there two civic addresses?
it's not legal.
Well, lawful non-conforming is legal, and it would have. I'm asking: are there two addresses, or is there one address?
Currently, there's two addresses, but only one of them is legal.
Thank you. So there's two units on the property, and they have separate addresses.
Again, it's not legal.
It's not what I asked.
It currently does it on the house. On the one side, it says John Street, and the other one says East 28th. But physically, they are in the same. They are. The property is sitting on the same property.
I understand that they're sitting on the same pit. I understand that. But but it's not possible for me to go between the two units. I have to go outside to go between the two units. Is that correct?
At this point, yes.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
And you're finished with your questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. And now we will move on to closing submissions by City of Vancouver's Council. It's also you, Mr. Dixon.
Uh, My submissions are going to be very straightforward because under the bylaw, the premises as described by Ms. Lamb are not eligible for a short-term rental license. It has to be one single unit in which you can move in between it in order to be your principal residence. If it's two separate units, they can't both be your principal residence. It's simply not physically possible. This is clearly a separate unit that should not be being rented as a short-term rental. And in my submission at this juncture, it's not actually open to council to issue an STR license to Ms. Lamb based on her description of the property because it doesn't satisfy the requirements for being a principal residence. And this panel is bound by the bylaw with respect to that. This is not an eligible property for a short-term rental, and therefore you cannot issue a license. Obviously, the secondary consideration is that it can't be issued a short-term rental license until after July anyway, because the court order wouldn't allow for it. But based on what Ms. Lamb's just said, it's not eligible for a short-term rental license, and it would be illegal for this council to issue one for this property.
All right, and
Chair, I have a follow-up question to our council.
it's not question time yet, Councillor Bly.
Oh, sorry.
We're moving on to replying and closing submissions by the applicant. Let me just make sure. Mr. Dixon, there will be time to ask you questions if necessary during the discussion by business license.
I would suggest it's better to do it now,
Okay.
so that all the questions are out, so that Ms. Lamb knows what she needs to respond to as well.
Okay, then let's do that. Councillor Bly, go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Chair. Mr. Dixon, I'm just curious if, can you just confirm for me, and perhaps it would be our witness, our city staff, but that there's been a business license for short-term rental since 2016 up to 2020 for under this name / property. Is that correct?
I'm only aware of one for 2021. I don't know whether there's been one previously. The way our system works is that people apply, and we issue the license. We issue a short-term rental license as of right, and then so people will often we see this fairly regularly that people apply for a license and are issued the license despite the property not being eligible because it doesn't crop up either through a complaint or through our audit process. So that if there has been a license, that would explain that. But perhaps Mr. Miyagi knows the exact history of the licensing. I know there's a 2021 license in the materials.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Would you like Mr. Miyagi to comment on that, Councillor Bly?
That would be great. Yes, thank you.
If you're prepared to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the chair, the licenses have been issued starting September 2018. So anything prior to that would have been unregulated because there hasn't been any bylaw. With respect to her license, we are aware that she had applied for a license in November 2020 for the 749 location, which once again is a question mark to us, but she had applied and then was issued one, and then she never did renew that one. So it was only issued for a month because these are fiscal from January to December. But as I stated earlier, for January 2020 to May 2020, she also had a license for this current address, that's 374 East 28th Avenue. So she's had these licenses, and then she was suspended on the 374 East 28th Avenue.
Okay, so thanks for that, Mr. Miyagi. I'm sorry, I don't want to mispronounce your last name.
Miyagi, like in the Karate Kid.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. That's what threw me off because I was like, is that the Karate Kid? Okay. Back to, so what I'm trying to reconcile is Mr. Dixon's comments regarding that it's not a legal, it's not a situation that would be legal for us to grant a short-term rental license. What I'm trying to figure out is, was there a change in the configuration, or did we grant a short-term rental license in 2018 when we shouldn't have? Can you respond to that?
Yes, through the chair. So in 2020, she had applied for this license at 374 East 28th Avenue. And as Mr. Dixon indicated, they are automatically issued, and then we pick them up as we do reviews and whatnot. And given her past history, we were able to catch this one, but it took us till May to do so. The location that she's talking about has one address, but has two, it sounds like it has two suites, one off of John Street and one off of 28th. The understanding is that she's trying to rent one suite and live in another. And as Mr. Dixon indicated, that's not permitted because those are two separate suites. But also, as part of the bylaw, it's an illegal suite, or if she indicated it's an illegal suite. So we have to go and check that out as well, mind you. But if it's an illegal suite, that's also in a bylaw that says that you cannot operate a short-term rental in an illegal suite. So, if it's work without permit, or if it's been created illegally, not based on the original footprint, then unfortunately it's not allowed. And Mr. Dixon is correct that the bylaws do not permit us to allow a short-term rental at that one location.
Okay, that's pretty clear. So just one quick follow-up, if I may. We get the application, we grant the license based on the information that we receive, and now we have new information about the configuration of the suite, its validity in the sense that, is it a legal suite or not? And now that information also will be under our consideration as to whether or not we can actually even grant the license on any legal basis. Just sort of also commenting that new information, this new information about the configuration and the legality of the suite is not in our package. So that's new information for us to be considering right now.
That is correct. The initial
Okay.
the initial suspension was based on egregious activity of operating without a license. That was enough to continue on towards prosecution because there was no compliance met in that period of time. So that alone was enough for the prosecution to go forward. So the illegal suite piece, we didn't need to necessarily investigate that piece because we had this other egregious information from illegal activities going on.
Understood. Okay, that's helpful clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Councillor Dominato, did you have clarifying questions?
No, Chair, thank you.
And I do have a question, and since Mr. Dixon has suggested it's best to ask this now, I'll ask this question of you, Mr. Dixon. If you prefer I ask of the witness, or to direct it to the witness, I'll do that. I understand that there are a number of different addresses, 5 that were noted in the evidence here. The short-term rental license pertains, the reapplication pertains to 1. I'm wondering if we have information as to if the other 4 are still owned by the applicant here and her husband, and if we have information as to whether or not they're empty homes or if they're still living there.
I'm not aware of anything. You would direct that to Mr. Miyagi.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miyagi, sorry to put you on the spot, but considering there's 5 residences.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our information indicate that the 749 and 750, so on and so forth, the other location, that was sold in October 2021. And so that's the information that we have. But we also have information that she bought another property with her husband's name on it as well in 2021, October 2021, and that's the Strata building that I mentioned. So, and the extensive case files that we had for the 749 with Mr. Buchanan, looking at the posse information that we have, that case was closed because the property no longer is under their name.
Okay. And how many properties are currently under their name, including the East Second?
To our understanding, there's two.
There's two.
Yeah, to our, what, two lots. But there's, as we mentioned, there's that John Street and the 28th, so that one has two addresses.
But it's my understanding it doesn't have two addresses, it's one address with an.
It's one lot address, but yes, but it's two rentable, or, sorry, one's an illegal suite, so my apologies.
No, no worries. Thank you. I was just trying to understand that. And that's where we leave off there. And now it's time for a reply or closing submissions. If you have any closing comments, Mona?
Sure. The 374 East 28th, when we bought it, it was a tear down. And so we applied for the city permit to rebuild the building back. The city has a proper layout of what the configuration was because they came in and did the inspections, giving us a final permit on the building. Furthermore, the city inspector apparently has came into the property on the Airbnb property inspector and spoke to my ex-husband. They met on site. So they have looked at the lot and they have viewed the space numerous times according to them. He spoke to me. I don't know who I spoke to. I never spoke to any city inspector. But according to the core document, the city inspector had met with Mr. Buchanan without my knowledge, and they met on site where the Airbnb listing. We were never being advised since 2016, this property is not on board with the bylaw. It's simply our understanding was it's just like a basement suite. You don't, you have a door to it if you want to. We do have a door to it. Currently, it's, we can open it again, but we locked it that we don't have access to the other side. But we were never being advised that was the reason that we didn't get the license. I wasn't. I was sure was not aware of that until today, until now. And so that's really unfair to me because I wouldn't have even applied for it and waiting for 4 months and hoping I would be able to get a short-term licensing. I was under the impression this was the only matter, not able to, apply for license because I didn't have a proper address, to use them as my principal residence, and also I was not under the impression this is illegal suite to the city point of view. So that's my concern. And in terms of the other property I own, that was bought 2.5 years ago as a pre-sale with my ex-husband. It is already listed for sale. It's actually got the 2 offers for sale. So there's no intention for Airbnb or anything like that. It was never been like that at all. So I'm not sure what was it, try to initially, I have no intention to apply for another Airbnb besides 374 East 28th.
Is that the conclusion of your comments? Thanks. And Mr. Dixon, did you have something else? I saw you stand up.
I did not. I was
Okay,
going to correct
thank you.
It's not necessary.
And now we will move on to discussion by the business license.
Chair, a point of privilege.
Oh.
I'm on the queue for questions.
Sorry, Councillor Dominato. I thought that was the
That's all right.
holdover. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mona, thank you for your closing comments. I'm just looking for you to clarify something for me, and it's specifically, and maybe I'm confused. I thought I heard you say earlier there's no connection between the 2 units, the one they were using for short-term rental and where you're living, but now I just heard there is a connection between the 2 units. There's a door, but you have it locked off.
I haven't really used it for so long, and it's just being blocked up by furniture right now because the other side is an Airbnb. So I kind of forgotten that information. Again, I honestly haven't stayed in that house for so, like, just since August again. And we never really used that space, and so I didn't even think of it. There is a door over there that was connected to it. It's currently been blocked off, and with the furniture just right in front of it. So we have in case of the guests try to come in from the other side or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Chair, I'll follow up with questions to our city staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we move on to discussion. So now would be the time that you could do that, Councillor Dominato. If you have
Okay,
questions
thank you, Chair.
for our
If
council.
yes,
Okay.
if I may, to Mr. Dixon, it's just to clarify, Mr. Dixon, your point earlier that an STR license isn't permissible at this property because the two units are not connected. They're distinct units. Can you just clarify that based on what we just heard?
We would still, for the purposes of the bylaw, consider them to be distinct units, based on the discussion that Ms. Lamb has said, and having a single door. I led down the path that I did because it was clearer and absolute, but we would still consider this to be two separate units. The intention of the STR bylaw is that short-term rentals are to be done in your principal residence. It's quite clear from the way Ms. Lamb has described it that the other unit is not her principal residence in any way. It's a separate unit that she doesn't go into. She can't access. There is a scenario in which something like a basement suite could be part of the main unit, but most of the time we consider basement suites, even if they have one connecting door, to be separate units. Because that's not the person's principal residence. It's an entirely separate unit. One of the telltales is always a second kitchen, which this unit clearly has. So there's clearly two distinct dwelling units here. And the city staff would consider these to be two distinct dwelling units and contrary to the bylaw.
Thank you. That addresses my question.
Now I have a question for Mr. Dixon. Mr. Dixon, I understand that in other bylaws, a separate unit is constituted by a stove. Is that correct? Or
I believe there are.
Different?
That's not the definition we necessarily use here, but the notion is that it has to be a joint dwelling space between two people. And and we always look for indicators as to what constitutes a joint space. And like a single space for a single family wouldn't generally have two stoves in it. It's just not something that generally happens. There are some specific circumstances where that occurs. And generally speaking, the city of Vancouver doesn't allow two second kitchens in single units. So the second kitchen would have to be taken out if it was to be all amalgamated into a single unit. That's clearly not the intention here. So based on the information provided, I haven't seen the plans. I wasn't aware of that, and those, of course, could be reviewed at some point. But in my submission, it won't change anything with vis-a-vis the authority of this panel. This is clearly two separate dwelling units.
So it's fair to say that even if it was a lock-off suite, it could be turned into two separate dwelling units because it has those two distinct kitchens.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the clarification. I'm
Point of privilege, Chair. I've
Yeah.
lost all sound.
Okay, I'm not sure how that happened, but I was just gonna say we're in discussion on this matter. So I'm wondering if anyone has a motion or has further questions that they need clarified or any discussion on this matter. Should we take a quick recess? Councillor Dominato, Councillor Bly, have you still lost sound?
No, I just got it
Chair,
back.
Chair. I guess a point of procedure is around, maybe you could walk us through the appropriate next steps around, is there a motion to be moved in this context, or just because I've only done a very few of these hearings, so.
Okay, Councillor Dominato, I'm going to suggest we take a brief recess.
I can explain that very quickly. That'll be,
Yes.
that'll be fine. We don't think.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dixon.
At this juncture, yes, a motion is required. So the motion in this, for the, based on today, would simply be as simple as to say whether you agree to issue a license to Ms. Lam or you decline to issue a license to Ms. Lam. If you're going to decline, then you should have some brief explanation as to why.
Counselor Dominato, is that clear? Do you require a recess to consider that?
Thank you, Chair. No, that's helpful. I suppose I can put something in writing then. And so I would need a 5-minute recess to put something in writing to our committee.
Okay, then let's take 5 minutes and we will return at 5. Or sorry, we will return at, I was going to say 5:02, but we'll return exactly at, I have 2 different clocks here. So let's say we'll return at 11 a.m. Let's take 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm ready. And I think when we left off, Councillor Dominato was on the queue. Councillor Dominato? I'll just note that we're back from a recess. And Councillor Dominato, when we left, you were on the queue. Clerk, I'm not hearing Councillor Dominato. Is there a technical issue?
Councillor Dominato, are you able to hear me? Do you have a,
We may, if I may just move for a couple more minutes. I think maybe Councilor Dominato had headphones on and now they're not, so maybe she can't hear us because it's in the headphones.
sent a request to unmute? Okay, she
Here
is
we
now.
go.
Councillor Dominato, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. I've actually just circulated a motion to, and I'm hoping Ian Dixon will review it and assure that it's in order. And so I've circulated that to members of the panel as well as to you, Tina, and to Ian Dixon.
And I'll thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Dominato. I'm just going to give Mr. Dixon a moment and he can signal to me whether or not this is in order. Can we take our, I'll get your microphone on and if you could take your
Yeah,
mask off.
sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Dixon.
Happily take the mask off. I think that it's inappropriate at this point, given the nature of the way this matter has come before council, to say that you're upholding the chief license inspector's decision. So I think this is it should state that the decision is the business license hearing panel refuses to issue an application for a business license to Salman, and then from then on.
So if we
rest of it is
started
fine.
from the that portion,
Yes, so you should just say that the business license hearing panel refused to issue a business license. And then the quote for business license. And then from then forward is fine.
I'm going to ask if the clerk was able to. Were you able to catch that? Oh yes, I'm seeing nods. And maybe what I'll do, Councillor Dominato, is to make sure that this is within the spirit and intent of what you'd put forward. I will ask the clerk to read it out.
That would be helpful.
motion?
I'm having a little
Okay.
trouble with the dictation of
And
it. So
because we haven't seconded it yet, there is no issue with that. Please, if I could ask the clerk to read out the motion.
That the business license hearing panel refuse to issue a business license to Hao Shan Lan for a short-term rental accommodation at 374 East 28th Avenue, Vancouver, BC, on the basis that the property in question is not eligible for short-term rental under the City of Vancouver's license bylaw 4450, and the applicant has a history of non-compliance with the City of Vancouver license bylaw 4450.
Is that the motion you're moving, Councillor Dominato?
that's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Do I have a seconder for that?
Second?
Thank you, Councillor Bly. And is there any discussion? on this matter? Councillor Dominato, I see you on the queue. Did you have anything more?
Um, I guess I'll simply add, Chair, just I guess commentary to round out the motion tabled is what I've heard very clearly, or has emerged from the panel hearing this morning, is that this property, while applications are made and then they're automatic, and it may be later through complaints or audits that we find that they're not compliant with our bylaw. It's become clear through the discussion today that this property isn't eligible for short-term rental because of the nature of the uh, dwellings and the two units, independent units. And so it's on that basis I think we've been advised legally that we can't issue a short-term rental license at this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else on the queue, I will move us to a vote. And council, panel, if you could please vote on screen, because we're not all together here. Please let us know if you need a vote assist. And I'm just doing it myself. I was doing it myself. You probably could have done it faster, but I'll let you do it because the screen's frozen for me. Okay, thank you. And if you could pull up the vote, that passes with unanimous consent. And I'm wondering if there's a motion to adjourn. Someone like to move a motion?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Bly. All in favor?
Yay.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.